The hall was heavy with smoke and shadows. Chains rattled in the silence, broken only by the auctioneer's sharp voice calling out the next lot. All around the circular platform, buyers sat with greedy eyes waiting for their chance to purchase new slaves. Most were aliens, traders from distant colonies, some were mercenaries, and a few were humans dressed in black coats. On the wooden stage stood a row of frightened captives. Some were strong men with scars, some were women with sharp eyes who still looked proud, and some were children too weak to stand tall. But among them one girl stood apart. She was small, her clothes torn, her face pale and tired. Her alien features made her look different from the rest. Her skin was a soft shade of silver blue, her eyes large and full of sadness. She looked so thin that it seemed a single push could break her bones. The auctioneer slapped his stick on the ground. "Lot 27, he shouted, pulling her forward. A young female, barely grown. She may not look strong, but with the right training she could serve in any household. "Who will start the bid?" The crowd laughed. Some buyers leaned back in their seats and shook their heads. A trader whispered loudly to his neighbor, "Too weak. She won't survive a month." Another spat on the ground and said, "Not worth a single coin." The girl kept her eyes on the floor. She did not fight, did not cry, did not even beg. She had learned long ago that no one listened to her voice. Her family was gone, her home destroyed in the wars between empires. All that remained was this, being sold like an object. She felt hollow inside, like she had already been erased from the world. The auctioneer tried again. "Look at her eyes. Exotic rare. Who will take her?" His voice cracked with frustration. Still no hands were raised. The crowd buzzed with cruel laughter. "She is broken," a voice called out. "Too skinny to work. She will only bring trouble." Each word stabbed at her like a knife. The girl tightened her fists, but she stayed silent. Inside, her thoughts were cold and hopeless. "No one will want me. Not even as a slave." The auctioneer grew impatient. "Very well," he said bitterly. "We can lower the price." 10 credits! "Just 10 credits for this one." Still silence. Not a single buyer lifted a hand. For the first time that evening, a captive stood completely unsold. The hall, filled with cruel men and women, had decided that her life was worth nothing. The girl felt her knees weaken. Her body trembled, but it was not from fear anymore, it was from shame. Shame that she was less than everyone else, shame that even in chains she was unwanted. Her heart whispered, "This is the end. I will be thrown away like trash." The auctioneer cursed under his breath. "She is worthless," he muttered. He signaled to the guards. "Take her back. Perhaps she will be sent to the mines or left to rot. No one wants her." 2 guards moved forward. The heavy boots echoed against the floor as they approached her. The girl closed her eyes, waiting for the rough hands to drag her away. She imagined herself disappearing into darkness, never to see the light of day again. But just as the guards reached for her arms, something changed. A chair scraped against the stone floor. Someone had stood up. The crowd turned to look. In the back of the hall, where shadows covered most of the benches, a tall figure leaned forward. He was different from the others. His clothes were plain, his face calm, his eyes sharp and steady. A human. He raised one hand, the hall froze. Whispers rippled through the crowd. "A bid? Who is that?" "A human." Why would he want her? The auctioneer blinked, shocked. You are placing a bid?" The human gave a slow nod. He did not shout, he did not smile, he only raised his hand higher so that there was no mistake. The girl opened her eyes. Her gaze lifted, and for the first time she saw him. She could not understand. Why would anyone choose her, when even the cruelest traders refused? Her heart beat faster. A spark of confusion, and a spark of something else she had not felt in a long time. Hope. The auctioneer cleared his throat. "Very well. Sold to the human in the back." He struck the floor with his stick. "The girl is his." The chains around her wrists felt suddenly lighter. She was still trembling, but this time, it was not only from fear. Something new stirred in her chest. Something fragile but alive. As the guards stepped away and the human shadow grew closer, the hall filled with whispers and shock. No one knew why he had chosen her, and she herself did not know what fate awaited her now. But one thing was certain. Her story was not over. The market square outside the auction hall was loud with laughter, trade, and cruel bargains. But for the girl, all sound seemed distant. She walked slowly, her chains clinking softly at her sides. The guards no longer dragged her. Instead, they let her stumble forward because now she belonged to someone else. Her head was lowered, her silver blue hair falling across her face. She did not dare look up. All she could think was, why? Why did he choose me? The man who had raised his hand, the human, walked a few steps ahead. His shoulders were broad, his coat plain, his step steady. He did not speak, and he did not turn to look at her. His silence pressed against her heart more than chains ever had. Behind them, the crowd of traders still whispered. He must be mad. Buying trash, what a waste. She'll die in a week. Their laughter chased her like shadows. Every word stung. Her body felt heavier with shame, as if she carried the weight of their cruel voices. But in that ocean of mockery, one whisper was different. A softer sound. She looks broken. It was not said with anger or cruelty. It was a whisper of pity. The girl could not see who spoke, but the tone pierced deeper than all the laughter. Broken. That was what she was. A broken thing, not a person. Her heart squeezed painfully. She thought of her parents, once strong, once full of hope. They had tried to protect her when the raiders came, but in the end they were cut down. She remembered the fires, the screams, the cold nights alone. That was when she had stopped crying. That was when she had become hollow. Now, she thought, even strangers could see it in her eyes. The human stopped walking. She almost bumped into him. He turned, and for the first time she looked at his face clearly. His eyes were sharp but not cruel. His jaw was strong, his skin roughened by years of labor or travel. He studied her quietly as though he wanted to read the truth behind her silence. "You can walk?" he asked. His voice was calm, low, steady. She nodded quickly, her voice caught in her throat. She had not spoken in days. "Good," he said simply. Then he unlocked the chain from her ankles. The clink of falling metal echoed louder than the voices around them. She froze. No one had done that before. Even in the cages, even in the long marches, the chains had always stayed. She rubbed her ankles, feeling the raw skin beneath. Her heart raced. The traders watching hissed in disbelief. "He's insane," one muttered. "She'll run away." The girl heard them too. For a moment, she thought maybe they were right. She could run. She could vanish into the alleys of the colony. But where would she go? No family, no food, no safe place. She would only be captured again. So she stayed. The human turned back and kept walking. She followed, her steps unsteady but free for the first time in years. As they left the square, the noise of the auction faded. The streets grew quieter, lined with dim lights and old stone walls. The colony smelled of smoke and metal. The girl's mind was still storming with questions. Why me? Why now? What does he want? She remembered the whisper of pity again. She looks broken. The words spun in her head like a curse. Did he also see her as broken? Was that why he bought her, for cheap pity? Her voice cracked as she finally spoke. Her first words in what felt like forever. Why did you buy me? The human slowed but did not stop. He glanced at her, his eyes calm but unreadable. Because no one else did. The words hit her like thunder. Simple. Clear. But behind them was something she could not understand. Was it mercy? Was it charity? Or was it something else entirely? Her heart whispered, because no one else did. Tears burned her eyes, but she forced them down. She could not cry, not here, not in front of him. She had cried enough in the past, and it had never saved her. The human stopped again in front of a small transport vehicle. Its metal surface was scratched, its engine humming faintly. He opened the back door and motioned for her to sit inside. She hesitated, her legs trembling. A part of her wanted to run, but another part, the part that still hoped, pushed her forward. She climbed in. The seat was rough but soft compared to stone floors. He sat in the driver's seat. The engine roared and the vehicle began to move through the narrow streets. The girl looked out the window. The colony lights flickered by, cold and distant. She whispered to herself so softly that he could not hear. Am I free or am I still in chains? She leaned back against the seat, her heart torn between fear and fragile hope. For the first time in years, her path was uncertain, but not in the way she expected. And somewhere deep inside, beneath the cracks of her broken spirit, a tiny voice whispered back against the darkness. Maybe he saw more than pity. The ride in the transport felt endless. The girl sat in silence, her silver blue eyes watching the blurred lights of the colony pass by. Her heart was restless. She still did not understand why he had chosen her. His words, "because no one else did," echoed again and again inside her head. The human kept his eyes on the road. His hands gripped the steering controls with calm strength. He was not nervous, not impatient. He simply drove as though the decision he had made back in the auction hall was the most natural thing in the world. For the girl, it was not natural. It was impossible. She had been left unsold. Even the cruelest buyers had not wanted her. That moment had cut deep into her soul. She had accepted that her life was worthless. And yet, here she was, sitting inside a stranger's vehicle, free of ankle chains, heading to an unknown place. The silence between them grew heavier. She wanted to ask questions, but her voice trembled inside her throat. At last, she managed to whisper, What will you do with me?" The human did not answer immediately. His jaw tightened. After a long pause, he said, "I will not do anything to you. You will not be hurt again." The girl's breath caught. His tone was steady, but his words were strange. She had only known masters who used, punished, or abandoned. No one had ever spoken to her as if she were more than property. The vehicle slowed. They reached the edge of the colony where the buildings grew older, smaller, and quieter. He parked outside a simple metal house. The walls were scarred from years of wind and dust storms. A single dim light glowed above the doorway. "Come," he said, opening the door. She stepped out carefully, her bare feet touching the cold ground. The night air was sharp, carrying the distant hum of engines and faint laughter from the colony's heart. Here, however, it was quiet, almost lonely. The human unlocked the door and pushed it open. Inside was no grand chamber, no riches, no slaves. It was a small home, clean but simple. A table stood in the corner, 2 chairs by it. A narrow bed was set against the wall. A kettle rested near a heating plate. The air smelled faintly of old wood and metal oil. The girl stood frozen at the entrance. She had expected another cage, another chain. But there was none. The human gestured toward the table. "Sit." Her legs trembled as she obeyed. The chair creaked beneath her light weight. She stared at the surface of the table, afraid to meet his gaze. He moved slowly, setting a cup of water in front of her. She looked at it in disbelief. He did not test her strength, did not inspect her body like traders always did. Instead, he simply gave her water. Her hands shook as she lifted the cup. The first sip burned her dry throat and tears welled in her eyes. She had not tasted clean water in days. He watched her quietly, but without judgment. "You are safe here," he said softly. Safe. The word felt strange, heavy, dangerous. Could she believe it? Her heart wanted to trust him, but her mind screamed warnings. She remembered the guards, the laughter of the crowd, the whisper of pity. "She looks broken." Maybe he, too, only saw her as broken. Still, when she looked up at him, she did not see mockery in his eyes. She saw something else, resolve. The girl lowered her voice, almost a whisper. "Why did you step forward?" Everyone else turned away. He leaned back in his chair. His gaze did not waver. "Because I could not watch you be discarded. Because no one deserves that." His words struck her harder than chains ever had. No one deserves that. Did he truly believe she had worth? For a moment, silence filled the room. The girl's chest tightened. Something fragile stirred inside her. Something she thought she had lost forever. Hope. But with hope came fear. Fear of what tomorrow would bring. Fear that this kindness might vanish like a dream. Her eyes dropped to the floor. I am nothing," she whispered. "They said I am worthless." The human's voice grew firmer. They were wrong. Her breath shook. No one had ever contradicted the crowd before. No one had stood between her and despair. And yet this stranger had. That night, as the human prepared a small blanket for her to sleep on the bed, she lay awake staring at the ceiling. The word safe echoed in her mind. She curled into the blanket, her heart caught between disbelief and longing. She did not know his name nor his true purpose. She only knew one thing. When the entire galaxy looked away, he had stepped forward. And because of that single step, her story was beginning again. Morning came slowly to the colony's edge. A thin gray light filtered through the cracks in the metal shutters of the small house. The girl stirred beneath the blanket. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Her body tensed, expecting the rough voices of guards, the cold rattle of chains, the stench of crowded cages. But there was nothing, only the quiet hum of an old heater and the soft sound of footsteps from the other room. She sat up, her silver blue hair falling across her face. Her heart raced. The memories of last night returned. The human who had stepped forward, the water he had given her, the words he had spoken. Safe. Could such a word really exist in her world? The door creaked and he entered carrying a small tray. On it was bread, dried fruit, and a steaming cup. He set it gently on the table near her. Eat, he said simply. She hesitated. In her past, food was always given with conditions. Work harder, obey orders, or suffer. But here, his voice carried no threat. Slowly, carefully, she picked up the bread. It was rough but soft inside. She tore a piece with trembling hands and tasted it. Warmth spread through her empty stomach. She blinked, trying to stop the tears. He had given her water last night, now food this morning. Small things, but to her they were everything. The human sat down across from her. He did not watch her like a buyer studying his purchase. He simply let her eat. When her hunger finally calmed, he spoke. We need to walk. You must see that you are not a prisoner anymore. Her heart skipped. Walk, she thought he might lock her inside. She thought she would be caged again. Instead, he wanted her to step outside freely. She followed him to the door. Her hands trembled as he unlatched it. Bright morning light spilled in. She blinked against it, unused to such openness. The colony streets stretched out before her. Broken buildings leaned against one another. Small markets opened their stalls, children ran barefoot along the dirt paths. It was no paradise, but to her it was wider than any cage she had known. He stepped outside. She froze at the doorway, fear holding her back. If I step out, will someone catch me? Will the traitors take me back? Sensing her fear, the human turned and extended his hand. Not to pull her, but to invite her. His voice was steady. No one here owns you. Walk because you choose to. Her breath trembled. Slowly, she placed her foot on the ground outside. Then another. The air was cold against her skin, sharp and real. Each step felt heavy, as though the weight of her past tried to drag her down. But she kept moving, one step, then another. For the first time in years, she walked without chains. The human walked beside her in silence, letting her feel each moment. She looked around, seeing faces in the market, hearing voices call out prices. Some people stared, whispering, recognizing her from the auction. That's her, the unsold one. And the human who bought her. What is he thinking? The words stung, but she noticed something. Though they whispered, no one tried to stop her steps. No guard grabbed her. No chain clamped around her ankle. She was walking freely. Her chest ached with emotions she could not name. Was this truly freedom, or was it only a dream that would vanish? As they reached the edge of the marketplace, she paused. Her eyes glistened. I don't know how to walk like this. The human looked at her calmly. You already are. Every step you take is yours, her lips trembled. The idea was terrifying, yet beautiful. For so long, others had decided where she stood, where she slept, how she lived. Now, each step was her choice. They walked further, past the noise of the market, toward the hills beyond the colony. The ground turned rough, scattered with stones and patches of wild grass. The air grew cleaner, free of smoke. She stopped at the top of a small rise. For the first time in her life, she looked out at the horizon without bars or walls blocking her view. The sky stretched vast and endless. A tear slid down her cheek and she did not wipe it away. The human stood beside her. Silent, letting her breathe, she whispered, almost to herself, I thought I was nothing. He answered firmly, You are not nothing. You are alive, and that is enough to matter. Her heart shook at his words. Alive, to matter. She hugged her thin arms around herself as though holding on to this fragile truth. As they walked back toward the colony, the whispers of the people followed them. Some mocked, some doubted, but others stared with quiet wonder. A human had stepped forward when no one else would, and now the girl walked in freedom beside him. What began as a single act of pity had turned into something more. It was the start of a story that would spread far beyond the marketplace. One that might change not just her life, but the eyes of everyone who watched. The sun was setting by the time they returned from the hills. The colony's lights flickered on, one by one, casting pale glows across the dusty streets. The girl followed the human back into the small house, her steps slow but steady. Her chest was still tight from what she had seen. The horizon, the endless sky, the feeling of air that belonged to no one. It had been the first time she ever looked at the world without walls. And yet, even as hope stirred inside her, Hunger clawed at her belly. The human set a pot on the heating plate. The faint hiss of fire filled the room, followed by the smell of boiling broth. He moved with calm hands, adding pieces of dried meat, root vegetables, and herbs. To him, it was a simple meal. To her, it smelled like something beyond reach. She sat at the table, silent, watching every movement. Her throat tightened as memories returned. Half-rotten scraps thrown at cages, the taste of dirt mixed with food, the sharp ache of an empty stomach. She had not eaten a true meal in years. The pot simmered, steam curling into the air. He stirred once, then poured the soup into 2 metal bowls. He placed one in front of her, along with a small piece of bread. "Eat," he said softly. Her hands trembled. She looked down at the bowl, the warmth rising against her face. It felt unreal. She lifted the spoon carefully. The broth touched her lips and her eyes widened. It was hot, salty, rich with flavor. She swallowed quickly, then took another spoonful, then another. Tears filled her eyes. She tried to stop them, but they came anyway. She bent forward, hiding her face as the tears fell into the bowl. The human said nothing. He let her eat, let her cry as though he understood. For her, every bite was more than food. It was proof that she was not forgotten, not discarded. It was proof that someone had thought she deserved to eat like a living being. When the bowl was empty, she clutched the bread with both hands and nibbled slowly, savoring every crumb. Her stomach no longer hurt. For the first time in years, she felt full. The silence stretched, warm and gentle. She lifted her eyes at last. "Why?" she whispered. Her voice was broken but sincere. "Why give this to me? I am nothing." The human leaned back, his expression steady. "Because you are not nothing. You are alive. And alive people deserve to eat." Her lips parted, but no words came. She lowered her gaze again, tears blurring her vision. He stood and placed his bowl in the sink. Then he returned and set a small cloth in front of her. "Here," he said. She took it, wiping her face, ashamed of her tears yet unable to stop them. That night, when she lay under the blanket again, her body warm from food, she whispered to herself, "I ate. I ate, and no one struck me for it. No one shouted at me. No one stole it away." She hugged the blanket tightly. Her heart was fragile, but something inside was beginning to mend. The days that followed were quiet but strange. Each morning he gave her food, sometimes bread and fruit, sometimes soup or rice, simple meals but always enough. Each time she ate slowly, afraid the moment would vanish. Each time she fought back tears. The traders' voices still haunted her, broken, worthless, unsold. But here, in this small home, those voices seemed weaker. One evening, after another meal, she dared to ask, "What is your name?" The human paused, then answered, "Call me Jaren." The name settled in her mind like a small stone in still water. Jaren, the man who stepped forward, the man who gave food without chains. She did not tell him her name. She had not spoken it in so long, it felt foreign even to herself. But she whispered it in her heart, a fragile memory of who she had been before the cages. Jaren never pressed her. He never asked about her past, never demanded her story. He only made sure she ate, made sure she slept, made sure she walked outside when the sun rose. The first meal had been only soup and bread, but to her, it was more than survival. It was the first time she felt seen, not as property, but as a person. And though fear still clung to her, fear of traders, fear of chains, fear of tomorrow, she could not deny what had begun inside her. With each bite, each drink of water, each step she took outside, she felt it growing. A small, fragile seed, hope. The nights in Jaren's small home were quiet, almost too quiet. For the girl, silence was not peace, it was danger. In the cages, silence had always come before pain. Silence meant the guards were waiting for the right moment to strike. Now she lay beneath the blanket, her stomach no longer empty, her body no longer bruised. Yet sleep refused to come. Shadows filled her mind, pulling her back to places she wanted to forget. Her breathing quickened. Fire, screams, the smell of burning homes. She saw her mother's face again, silver blue like her own, reaching out before disappearing into the smoke. She heard the chains snapping shut around her wrists. She felt the cold floor of the transport cages. Her body shook. A whimper escaped her lips. Then another. Soon her voice broke into cries she could not stop. Jaren woke instantly. He stepped into the small room, his brow furrowed. She was curled tight, her hands clutching her head as if she could block out the memories. He knelt beside her bed. "You're safe," he said firmly. Her eyes opened, wet with tears. She could not believe him. They are coming. They will take me again. They always come back." His voice grew stronger. "No one is coming for you. Not while I stand here." Her cries softened, though her body still shook. He placed a steady hand on her shoulder, grounding her. For a moment she simply stared at him, trying to see if he truly meant those words. And in his eyes, she found no lies. Slowly, her sobs quieted. She breathed deeply, letting his presence anchor her. For the first time in years, someone was there when the nightmares came. But outside in the colony, whispers were spreading. The auction had not been forgotten. Traders remembered the girl who was left unsold, and the strange human who stepped forward. Some were amused. Others were angry. "She should have been mine," one trader hissed in a dark tavern. "A worthless child? You want her?" Another mocked. The trader slammed his fist on the table. "Not for her value. For my pride. A human made fools of us. I'll make sure he pays." Greed mixed with wounded pride, and pride was often more dangerous than hunger. Days passed. Jaren noticed how the girl walked with her head still low, afraid to meet anyone's eyes. At the market, she stayed close behind him, as though a single step away would mean being dragged back into chains. One afternoon, he gave her a small scarf to cover her hair. "Wear this," he said. She touched it carefully, confused. "Why?" His eyes scanned the busy street. "Because people are watching, and some eyes are not kind." Her chest tightened. The shadows of her past were not only in dreams, they lived here too, in the whispers of the market, in the gaze of angry traders. That night, she lay awake again. The food in her stomach, the blanket over her body, none of it erased the truth she felt deep inside. She was not safe. Not yet. When sleep finally claimed her, the nightmares returned, sharper than before. She saw the traders' faces laughing, reaching, pulling her away. She saw herself back on the auction stage, unwanted, unsold. She heard the whisper again. Broken. Her scream tore through the small house. Jaren rushed to her side, gripping her arms firmly but gently. "Look at me," he commanded. "This is not the past. Look at me." Her eyes flew open. She saw him there, not a guard, not a master, just a man standing between her and the darkness. His voice cut through the fear. "You are here. You are alive. No one will take you again." Her body shook, but she believed him a little more than the night before. The next morning, Jaren stood by the window watching the colony streets. He knew the whispers would not die. People would question him, test him. Some would try to take her back, not because they wanted her, but because they wanted power. He clenched his fist. He had stepped forward once in that auction hall, but he knew this was only the beginning. To protect her, he would need to step forward again and again. Behind him, the girl moved quietly, carrying the scarf he had given her. She wrapped it around her shoulders as if the fabric itself could guard her. Her eyes met his. For the first time, she whispered something she had not dared before. "Thank you." The words were soft, almost fragile, but they carried the weight of her heart. Jaren nodded, his expression firm. "Eat, then we prepare." "For what?" she asked nervously. His eyes shifted back to the streets. Shadows moved among the crowd, traders with sharp eyes and sharper pride. "For what comes next," he answered. That evening, as the sun fell and the colony darkened, the girl felt the weight of her nightmares pressing again, but this time when she closed her eyes, she remembered his words. "Look at me. No one will take you again." The shadows of the past were still there, but now, standing between her and them, was something new. Someone who would not run. The colony never stayed quiet for long. By the end of the week, everyone knew the story. The girl who had been left unsold. The human who had raised his hand. It spread from the auction hall to the streets, from the streets to the taverns, and from the taverns to the trade ships that left the planet. Whispers traveled faster than light. They say a human bought her. Bought her? No, saved her. No one saves slaves. That is not how the galaxy works, but it had happened, and now people could not stop talking. Inside Jaren's small home, the girl sat at the table, folding the scarf he had given her. Her movements were careful, almost ritualistic, as if the cloth carried more weight than it appeared. It was not just fabric. It was a shield, She lifted her gaze to Jaren. "They keep looking at me," she whispered. "In the market. In the streets. Everyone whispers." He nodded, unbothered. "Let them. The more they whisper, the more the truth spreads." Her brow furrowed. "The truth?" "That you are not property. That you are free." The words struck her heart, but she shook her head. "They don't believe it. They think I'm still broken." Jaren leaned forward, his voice steady. "Then stand. Show them you're not." Her throat tightened. She was afraid of eyes, of whispers, of being dragged back. But his words rooted inside her like a seed. Show them. That evening, Jaren took her to the market again. The crowd was louder this time, more curious. Whispers rose as they walked past. That's her. The unsold one. The human's shadow. The girl kept her scarf close, but she forced herself to walk beside him instead of behind. Each step shook, but each step was hers. At one stall, a child stared at her. His small alien hand tugged on his mother's sleeve. "She looks sad," he said softly. The girl froze. She expected the mother to scold him, but instead the woman bent down, whispering, "Don't stare. That girl is brave, brave." The word struck like a lightning bolt. No one had ever used it for her. For the first time, the girl lifted her head. She met the child's wide eyes, and instead of looking away, she gave the smallest nod. It was enough. That night, when they returned home, Jaren found her staring out the window. "They watched me," she whispered. "And I did not fall." He gave a small smile. "You walked in freedom. That's all that matters." She turned to him, her eyes wet. "Why me? Why did you do this? You could have left me." Jaren's gaze hardened, but not with anger, with resolve. "Because one step forward can change everything. You were not just left unsold, you were left unseen, and I could not accept that." Her heart pounded. For years she had been invisible, a shadow no one wanted, and yet this one man had stepped into the light for her. Far beyond the colony, on ships and stations, the story kept spreading. Other slaves heard it whispered through bars. A human raised his hand when no one else would. Some laughed, calling it madness. Others felt something stir inside them. Hope, a simple act. Too small for the galaxy to care, yet somehow the galaxy cared. Weeks later, the girl sat at the same table where she had once eaten her first true meal. Her body was stronger now. Her eyes no longer stayed on the floor. The shadows of her past still lingered, but they no longer ruled her. She looked at Jaren. "What happens now?" He folded his arms, leaning against the wall. "Now we live, and we see how far the whispers reach." The girl tilted her head. "The whispers?" He smiled faintly. "Every person who hears what happened will think. Some will mock. Some will fear. But others will believe. One step becomes many." Her lips trembled as she realized the truth. This was not just her story anymore. It was larger, greater. She whispered softly, as though speaking to the stars beyond the colony walls. "The galaxy is watching." Jaren nodded. "Let it watch." Outside, the night sky stretched wide and endless. Somewhere among the stars, powers far greater than them stirred. Some would see this as a threat. Others as a miracle. But for the girl, it was simpler. Once she had been nothing. Now she was someone the galaxy could not ignore. Her story had begun with silence, with being unwanted, with chains and laughter. But it was ending with a step into freedom, and a beginning into something far greater. And the galaxy, vast and cruel and endless, was watching.